Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ranting Atheist podcast. Today we'll be listening to the deconversion story of a fellow African atheist. It's really amazing that other Africans have been able to relate to the stories we've been sharing over the past few months, and this person shares how she lost her faith, and one of the ironic parts is because she read the Bible. She started reading the Bible and from Genesis only to come across the similar passage that started my own deconversion process, Genesis 38. It was very funny, Reading the Bible was what helped her to start deconverting. It really shows that if many Christians start reading their Bible, more atheists will start being produced. So the ignorance is really necessary for the delusion to be sustained. Fucking insane. So if you are yet to subscribe, please consider subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and other places where podcasts are available. Then if you'd like to share your story, please feel free to reach out via social media or via email. All the links are in the show notes below. So now, let's go and listen to the conversion story of Vanessa. Hello Vanessa, and welcome to Story of an Atheist.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for reaching out. Really appreciate you coming on to share your story with us.
Yeah, we have to show people that they're not alone in this.
Very, very true. Because it is depending on your geographical location, especially in Africa. Mm-hmm. You have to think twice before you expose yourself.
That's true.
Because there will be consequences one way or the other. But the main consequence is, if it's your life that is in danger, please calm down till you leave that area.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I always advise. If your life is in danger, please, 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 this is the only life you have. We didn't ask to have it, but for some weird reason, it has become precious to us. So,
yeah.
so we'll use it while we can. Yeah, so let me, it's good to have you here. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for creating this podcast as well.
I had to. If I didn't, somebody else will. So
yeah, actually, do you know I read about you anyway? It was in The Guardian. There's someone who did an article saying there are 10 favorite African podcasts.
Wow.
Yeah, and yours was there. I'll send it to you via email.
Yeah, I saw the link. Wow, that's really amazing. Yeah. Yeah, you don't go global.
You're doing things.
That's good to hear. Thank you for coming on. So, the listener right now knows we are speaking with Vanessa. So, can we get to know you a little more? Like, you are comfortable. Can we know your location, your age? Are you Gen Z, millennial, or older, or what do you do for a living, and any other thing that you're comfortable with sharing with us?
Yeah. Wait, the first one was at my age. I'm a millennial. I'm 29.
All right. Great.
Yeah,
great.
And I'm currently in the UK.
Cool. That makes sense.
I'm working. I'm an architect.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's really good. So, in the regarding this religious debacle, what do you currently identify as? Is it atheist, agnostic, irreligious, or you choose any identity? Atheist, pure, de facto.
Yeah, there's no. There's not. The point where I've reached, there's no going back.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. So, if you are to define atheism in your own words, what would you define it as?
I would define it as, personally, I would define it as a lack of belief in a higher power or a God. But I also include just questioning everything and not tying myself down to one particular doctrine or belief system. Like if, let's say, the common one is science. If something is debunked, I'll also say, okay, I was wrong in believing that, or you know what I mean? Not just holding on to a truth because it was taught to you at a particular time. So it's just a constant process of learning and learning, relearning, and just accepting that you would never know everything. And if you're wrong, you are wrong.
Can you share with us your religious background? What was it like? It was in as much detail as you'd like. Like it was a full breakdown.
Yeah, so my religious background is Christianity, and I was baptized Anglican. I was baptized as a baby, so I didn't have.
It's always so funny.
Didn't have much of a choice. Didn't have much of a choice, but yeah, I was baptized Anglican. But I would say like my family isn't super really. Obviously, there are some people who are. But my mom and my dad, they are religious.
Okay.
But I just don't think it controls their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did go to church. Like even when I was growing up, I grew up with my grandma at some point. Okay. And we did go to church on Sundays, but even after that, there wasn't like a follow-up of what did you do at Sunday school. There were no like Bible studies at home and stuff like that, which like from all the stories of my friends at school, like they would talk about how they would go 2-3 times a week, how after every service on Sunday, they would have like Bible meetings at home. There would be family prayers and stuff like that. And that's just nothing that happened like in our home. It was just Sunday, like that was it. But even with that, religion is just pretty much everywhere. You know what I mean? Like you are still expected to pray, you're still expected to do all these things. So yeah, that's the background. And I honestly think like for my mom, she's Anglican, but she was raised Jehovah's Witness.
Whoa.
And yeah. And in fact, most of all her siblings, and none of them are still Jehovah's Witness. And I think there's like not an understanding of atheism, so to speak, but I feel like coming from such a fundamental group, because they are, the way that she practices it is not as overbearing, because I feel like she kind of experienced that, like, because you know how you're not supposed to celebrate birthdays, no blood transfusion, and all those other things. So I think coming from such an extreme thing to Anglicanism, which is a breakaway of the stricter Catholics, so it's like, I don't know. That's what I would say, yeah.
So, you now, you've been born into an Anglican setting, no? You're baptized against your will. Now, growing up, how did you take it? Were you just chill? Were you serious with God? Did you believe all that? Or it was just based on what was told to you?
Yeah, I mean, I did believe, but I can safely say that I've never been in a situation where like my faith was lacking or growing. Like it was just, I just knew, okay, I believe in God and all that stuff. But you know what I mean? Like a lot of people would describe something happening and their faith would grow, or something bad happening and then they lose their faith. For me, it was just like a monotone, just one note of faith, I would say, but the belief in God was still there.
All right, okay.
It was still there. Because I think like they scare you, they fear monger you into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without fear, there's no religion is useless without fear.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, did you believe in hell?
Yes, I did.
So why did how did you manage with that, knowing that if even if you're a Christian, if you don't follow, if you do some things or if you don't follow God to a certain way, you won't go to heaven, like you go to hell. So how did you cope with that?
It was scary because, and I think it kind of gives you anxiety because you're constantly thinking, will this send me to hell? What's going to happen? Like you're just constantly on edge. All your actions are just, and even just sometimes I would actually get freaked out, not by hell, but the concept of God just watching you. You know what I mean? Like, because the way how they say, oh, cover that front camera of yours, somebody could be spying on you, watching you. Like, if you take that seriously, which probably they are, I don't know, the paranoia could make you run mad. So sometimes I'll just sit and think, like, how is someone just sitting and just watching you do whatever? You know what I mean?
247.
Yeah. So for me, that I feel like that was even more scary than the concept of hell. And then at some point, like after I turned 13, like 11 there, like preteen into teen, I started listening to a lot of rock music, and I still do. Nice. It's one of my favorite genres. So, and I don't know if you also listen to it, but the theme of rock is very like this.
Yeah, actually, Linkin Park is my own favorite band.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah, nice. I cried when Chester died. So
I know, me too. I was so depressed. I can't lie.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's like, and then obviously I still had the fear, but then after I started listening to rock music, like how some of the themes are, like they talk about depression, they talk very anti-government, some are even anti-religious lyrics and stuff like that. So I think for me that kind of like piqued my interest into thinking differently, so to speak. And even just, I think it also kind of removed the fear of the unknown, because I really like, how some of the videos are like very dark, a lot of symbolism and stuff like that.
It's horns and all those things. Like
and I was
the perfect satanic panic beats.
Yeah. Yes, and I was really just intrigued by that, like just like horror movies and stuff like that. And whenever people would be like, "Oh, that's satanic, that's like for hell and stuff like that," so I was like, but it's interesting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also just, I don't know if in Nigeria it's the same, but like animals like cats, snakes, owls, like they're considered
Cats suffer a lot in Nigeria because of superstition. They believe they are demonic animals.
Yeah.
Owls too are targets. Only dogs are enjoying here in this country.
Exactly. And my first pet was a cat. So, I'll just be like wondering, like, how can something that God said to have created be evil? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I remember at some point, like growing up, my aunts and even some other people be like, "Why do you like skulls? Why do you like?" And I'm like, "But you've got a skull in your body. Like, what? Where is the fear coming from? What is this about? So I think after starting to listen to that kind of music and just starting to question everything, that's where the fear of hell started like going away. But I was still like scared of where will I end up as a sinner still, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't completely scared of hell still, but yeah.
Lucky you. We our fear of hell was reinforced by Nollywood movies and this particular ministry, Mount Zion Film Ministries.
We also used to watch Nollywood, and there was a lot of fear. Like, there's so many witchcraft movies coming from Nollywood.
That's their MO. There must always be a form of juju. You know, it's just now that after I became an atheist, I now look at this is just the propaganda from the Christian mindset, in the sense that they presented the traditional religion in a different light, because Christianity needs an adversary. So the local adversary was the traditional religions.
They need a Thanos.
Yeah, what is Thanos? What is the MCU without Thanos? There must be a villain. The story won't be sweet at all.
No, it won't
be sweet. It won't make sense at all. So now before let me see how do I do this? Okay, let me do this now. But now you believe in God somehow, or you're kind of coasting along. When did you start to get all suspicious of the whole setting? Like, something is fishy. You know, when did the doubt start creeping in? Before all those, before we go to the point of being an atheist.
So it first started when I was in grade 8. I can't remember how old I was, but that was after the whole getting into music, rock music and stuff.
And this was back home in Zambia, right?
Yeah, it was back home in Zambia. And it was in grade 8, 9. And we had a history and civics teacher. And my grandfather happens to be like a person who was prominent in the struggle for independence.
Okay.
So whenever, like people, if I'm introducing myself for the first time, they would ask, "Oh, is this your grandfather?" And they would always speak about, he was independence and stuff like that. So this particular history teacher, he was like, "Oh, Nkumbola," and he said the name, and he was like, "Oh, your grandfather was quite important in the struggle for independence," and then he started talking about living through colonization, and he spoke about, he said that quote, they gave us the Bible and they took our land, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was from there, and it was just like, what is this man talking about? Like, how can he say that? And as a Christian, you're on the defense automatically. Yeah. Like, somebody can't just say that. That's a lie, And he talked very passionately about how, as Africans, they are made to feel less than human beings, and just the whole experience of how bad it was. And it was from there that I started doing like my own research into colonization. Then obviously slavery came up, and from there, like how imperialism as well, how missionaries were sent first to pacify Africans, and then economically they came, and just stuff like that. And that's where it started from. That's why I really just started to question so much, like everything. But still, I was just like, but I believe in God. You know what I mean?
Yes, no, you can't just let it go like that.
It's just so stuck. But it was hard, and I don't think people realize this. Like when you start questioning something that you've known your whole life, like it hurts actually. It's quite painful to go through, because people just think you leave and, So yeah, that's where it started from. Then I still used to and then that's when I started looking into like other mythology, like Greek mythology, Roman. And I was like, how are these gods outdated? Like I used to ask myself that, at some point people used to shrines were built. You could go to Greece right now and see temples of whoever built for who and who, but nobody believes in them anymore. So I was like,
what's going on?
Yeah. What is happening here? But still, I was just like, okay, but anyway, let's continue.
Jesus.
God is there. Jesus is there.
Of course, you have to.
Yeah, you just And I think also there was also the fear of if my parents knew that I was questioning this, or if people knew, you know, what will happen to me? What's going to happen? Also, hell was still in the background. So I was like, And then when when I was just like, when it kind of hit was when I went to a Catholic school. And, you know, after listening to how you deconverted, it's amazing how when you're put into a fundamentalist situation where you're just like, I just don't understand. I can't believe this anymore. And it's not like I went to and it's not like the boarding school was fundamentalist, so to speak, but obviously being a Catholic school, you have Catholic mass, you do everything that the Catholics are doing. So even when you go, when you're accepted at the school, because it's quite a popular school. So when you're accepted, you have to sign some form that says that you're basically agreeing to being at a Catholic school, but also adhering to Catholic principles and stuff like that.
Wow.
Like you're going to attend mass. Like even if you're Pentecostal, Anglican, or whatever, you're still required to attend mass and Stations of the Cross and the whole, is it that Mary procession thing? And anyway, yeah.
Catechism, you do all that?
No, that one was optional actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you weren't forced, because there were still people who were Pentecostal and Jehovah's Witness and all that stuff, but still, by being at a Catholic school, you are basically agreeing to, you know. And we had mass every Sunday, but we were put into houses like sports teams. It was blue, red, green, yellow.
Okay.
Yeah. And then each week, each house had mass. So you'd basically be going to mass twice a week. But the one in the middle of the week was like super early. And I just used to get so irritated by it. And because if you don't go to mass, you get punished. And that's just another thing where I was like, why? Like, why do you need to scare somebody into going to mass? Like, if this doesn't happen, this thing is going to happen to you. So it was just those small things that were happening. And then another thing, I'm just listing.
But how do you reconcile the doctrines, comparing it with your Anglican background? Did it really?
No, not really. I mean, Anglicans are kind of, because they still take communion and do they do the rosary? You know, this is how much I don't remember. But there wasn't much of a difference, because even some of the, I don't remember what they're called, but I'll just say chants, like those Mary Mother of God.
Okay.
Yeah, those. Most of them were the same, I think, except Mary, because I don't think the Anglicans followed that. Yeah, so it wasn't that different. Like I could, yeah.
I think so. One of a previous guests said he too was raised Anglican, and it was kind of because the king wanted to marry somebody, and the church did not approve, so he tried to create his own church, and that's how the Anglican church came about, because the king was people are carrying this on their head.
But you see, that just reveals how much you can twist to whatever you want. You know what I mean?
It makes it obvious that it's so man-made. Exactly,
because if it was a definitive word of God, there would be nothing to change whatever was written.
You can't just come up and start your own just like that, if it was for real. So it shows it's so man-made. Yeah. So carry on the story.
Yeah. So then, so there was this book series that I used to read, and the author hadn't released the last, the third part. And the school used to get donations like to the library from the Bay Trust and also some sponsors from Germany. So then that particular book, the author of that book is atheist. And it was the Golden Compass series. I don't know if you've heard of those, of the movie before.
Okay, Golden Compass. Yeah, I had the movie.
Yes. So and after reading it again, it wasn't even like a deeply atheist book, but it obviously had themes of angels, demons, and demons rising and stuff like that, and and obviously that's against,
Yeah.
So then one of the girls at school read the book before it was ever put on the shelf, and she reported it to the headmistress, and the headmistress confiscated the book. And I was like, what does... You know what I mean? And then after she asked the girl, like, are there any other books within the series? And she said, oh, yes, there are 2 more before this final book. So she confiscated them. And I remember my friend and I wanted to read them. So we kept going to her. I think for like over a month, we would go to her. Can we just read the last book? Can we just read the last book? And she hadn't even read it. She was just like, no, I can't allow that. But she really didn't have a reason. And when you go to her office, I remember we went to her office, there was just like a section in her office that had novels and books. Clearly, they were pulled from the library. And in my mind, I'm like, isn't this what these countries did?
For you.
Confiscating books, even short of burning the book. You know what I mean? Like, what kind of craziness is that, So it was like that one it stuck with me because it just didn't make sense. And I started to think, like, if your faith or whatever is so unshakable, what is a book?
Exactly.
What's
There's
a book?
always so much fear on controlling media.
Like, yes, controlling media. That's the thing. That's what was even kind of scary about it, that someone can just take and ban people from reading them. So the next thing that I forced myself to read was the Bible. I was like, let me read this from the front to the back and see if I come out as Christian.
That Christian.
Exactly. Because like I said in the beginning, like my faith never grew, it never waned. It was just like, and just that thing where people kind of guilt trip you, like, how people worship, like some are loud and you're just like, how is that not capturing me, like, why is it the Holy Spirit doing what?
Start speaking in tongues.
Oh, that's another thing, tongues were banned. Of
course, the Catholics do that. That's Pentecostal nonsense.
That's another thing. I remember tongues were banned. So, and what made me start actually reading the Bible is at my previous school, it was a school owned by the Mines, formerly owned. And I would say it was not a secular school, but we had people of different doctrines come to that school. There were people who are Muslim, who are Hindu, who are, and that wasn't even like a big point. The main point was that you're just coming to school and that's it. It was a trust school. Then when going to Catholic school, obviously there's going to be religious education.
Yeah.
And this particular one, we had religious education before, but that one was exploring all of them. So we would learn about Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and African tradition. But obviously the concentration was on Christianity. And then we just learn, like, what are the books? What other books do people read?
Okay.
You know what I mean? If we read the Bible, what are the others? What do they practice? So it wasn't, I don't think it was much of, how can I explain it? It was just like
just an overview.
An overview. Yeah, that's the right word. So when finally going to Catholic school, the type of religious education that was there was that the exam was set up in a way that you had to memorize chapters.
Wow.
Or verses. And then you'd be asked to write them as they are in the exam.
What?
And after that, like you had to memorize. I remember we had to memorize Psalms. I don't know what, but there were just so many that you had to memorize. Sometimes it would be 50 verses, but you had to write them as they were. You had to write them as they were. And then after that, there would be questions asking you about the passage, like what did it mean when this happened and stuff like that.
And
so that's
is this a subjective answer, or does a specific thing you must say according to the marking scheme?
Yes. So obviously you couldn't answer as freely as you wanted. But that was the starting point, because I just realized that before, when I read the Bible, I didn't read. I just figured, oh, I read the Bible, I'll go to heaven. You know what I mean? Like, as long as I'm holding the book and reading something about it. But I never really was understanding or even questioning what I was reading. So that after sitting through one of the term exams, that's when I picked up the Bible. I was like, let me read this openly, objective. Let me question everything that I read, the same way that the exam is questioning me about certain lines in the Bible.
Yeah.
Let me also ask myself this. And that's when it just started crumbling just there. I remember getting to Leviticus and being so angry, because there were just ridiculous things that were, don't do this, do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there was, I remember someone was talking about how masturbation is a sin. And you know the verse that I'm getting.
Genesis 38.
Yes. And
wow.
I remember asking why, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they'd said, oh, read Genesis. And I was just like, this is your reason. This doesn't even relate. And then I was also like, but why did he need to die? You know what I mean? Like, in the biblical times, there were people being killed, hanged, raped, but you decide to concentrate on someone. It was just a lot, you know what I mean? And I hadn't even gotten to the end, and I was already exhausted. I was tired. I just couldn't believe it, honestly. But even then, like, in my mind, I was just telling myself, get to the end, like, just see what it's all about. You know what I mean? Giving myself false hope in a way, because
it gets better.
Yeah. And I remember still reading it, because I was at that school for a year and a half until I finished my grade 12. And I remember finishing the Bible after I had finished. And after finishing it, I was agnostic. I was just like, no, this can't. First of all, there are so many contradicting things. And it also doesn't make sense. And also, because we memorized so much, there was also, I remember one of the topics that we had to do was about women submit and all that stuff. And, you know, as a firstborn African girl, there's you really see how you're treated against, you know, your male cousins or your brothers and stuff like that. And just generally how society treats women. And, you know, the way my mom raised me, it was like, she never said you're below men or anything like that. Like, she was quite empowering. So to read verses like this that don't speak, you know what I mean, women are not supposed to, I was just like, why, you know? And I remember in Catholic school, I don't know who answered me, no, because we came from the rib. And we just learned about reproduction. How do you come from a rib? You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's one thing that the Catholics don't realize. Like, they have such a good education system. Like, I won't fault them on that, because when it came to the sciences like chemistry, they taught it unbiasedly. They never brought religion or anything into it. It was just
so they taught evolution too?
No, was it? No, not evolution, but just like if it was biology, you were learning biology. If you were learning reproduction, there wasn't going to
They won't find a connection and say God.
Yes, exactly. Like especially when you get to reproduction, like and it was a sister who actually taught us biology. Like when we got to reproduction, there was no sex before marriage is a sin, stuff like that. When usually that happens,
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting to be in a religious setting that drew the line and never tried to mix those two, like sciences and religion. Yeah. So it was after grade 12, that I remember just saying I'm agnostic. And it's interesting because I never had the terminology for it. I just knew that, because even atheism.
Looking back, you just see that, okay, that was when I was agnostic.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think even the word atheist, I think I found it in uni. And then, like you said, looking back, you're just like, at some point, that's what I became,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're agnostic now. How did you get to the point of being an atheist?
It was in my third year of uni. And I can't say I was lost, but it was like, after my first year, I was like, I'm just not going to go to church anymore. And I never went. And it was because on Sunday, every Sunday, you're used to going to one place. All of a sudden, you have this free time that you don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel guilt and lost as well. Because everyone else around you seems to have a purpose for what they're doing on a Sunday. Like, they're excited, they're getting their clothes ready, you know what I mean? And then you're just like...
Yeah, just chilling.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously I enjoyed it the first few times because it was like, I can do this now and that. But at some point, you start to feel, some type of way about it. And when I would go home, it would be back to like going to church. And then that's when I would be like, this is why I don't go anymore.
Because you have to play along.
Exactly. You really become a good actor,
It's all about the actions. They would never know unless you say something. Once you just do the acts, they believe that you are it. It's so easy to deceive them.
Because even in church, I'll be there saying, Hail Mary, this. And in my mind, I'm like, why are you lying? You don't believe anything that you're saying. What is happening, Yeah, so like the uni break was about 2 to 3 months. So for 2 to 3 months, I would have to go back and pretend. But I just held on to, but the rest of the year I'll be at uni, I get to be myself without any questions or people forcing me or anything. So I was just like, let me just live like that. It's fine. And then in third year, I remember being like, let me just stop. Let me just stop holding on to this. There might be a God somewhere. You know what I mean? And I just stopped. I was just like, this is it. Let me see what's going to happen. And there was just something very liberating about it, because after a while, obviously I felt lost, but after a while, it sunk in that there was, if something good happened, something good happened. If something bad happened, it wasn't the devil. And also, if anything bad happened, or if something happened that I didn't like, I would sit, think about it, be able to trace what I did, where it went wrong and stuff like that. And you know what I mean? I just all of a sudden felt like I was responsible for my life, and I was more accountable for a lot of the things that I did. And I just started to live more intentionally. I was able to say no to things that I didn't want. But before it was just like, oh, respect, like if your elders are telling you, respect your elders. If you know what I mean, like you're constantly tying it to some doctrine, you know, and it was just completely liberating and so free, and I felt light. And I just said this, I can't go back to whatever that was. And it was just it was very liberating at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, so that was back in 2015. Yeah, 2015.
Wow. 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Time really flies. Well.
It doesn't even feel real.
Time really flies. So now you're an atheist. Who did you tell? So did you tell anybody? Who did you tell first, or were you just? Did you cast?
Actually, I thought. You know what's funny is that a lot of my friends who I met in, like, we had a rock group, you know, on Facebook where we'd share music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of them identified as atheists, and even while I was Christian, we still remained friends. And sometimes I would ask, like, how can you be a friend with, you know, with me? And their explanations would just be like, because I know you as a person, you know? But a lot of them were. So, and then sometimes they would assume that I was, because they said, oh, but you don't typically do Christian things. Like, you're not in the church like that and stuff like that. Like, you're not out here preaching and converting people and stuff like that. So I was just like, but I am. And it's almost like they knew before me.
That's one thing that I do like. If you take the average self-professed Christian, like if you see the way they live their lives and an atheist, the difference is that the atheist just says, I don't believe in God. The way they live their lives are almost identical.
Exactly.
It's just funny, man.
Funny. There was someone on your podcast, I can't remember. I think they said if you were to actually look, you'd find that more atheists live a Christian life than the other way around, because of just the way that they approach life, but they're not even tied to like a doctrine, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I told a few people, and some of them were like, we knew. We knew.
Finally.
Yeah, some of them were like, finally, what were you doing? Believing, you know what I mean? Like, you know, some of them were shocked. I still maintain some friends who are Christian, who were Christian. I've got a few friends who are, but I feel like there's just a line where we don't talk about, not that we don't talk about it, but it's just like, okay, you believe whatever. I'll continue to like say whatever I want and post whatever I want.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, yeah. And then after I finished, that was 2015. So 2 years later, I finished in 2017. Now I finally went home. Like, there wasn't like, no, I can go back to school and just
no escape.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I remember, like, I think for the first 3 months, I would go. And then at some point I was like, I just felt stifled, because obviously at school I was free to do whatever. And I just felt like myself, like a better word. And then one day my mom was just like, oh, let's get ready for church. And I was just like, I don't want to go. And she asked why. I was just like, I just don't feel like it. So she said, oh, okay, fine. And then she came back from church and she said, oh, today we're talking about tithe and stuff like that. And I remember starting work a few months after that. And she was like, oh, you should try tithing. I was like, but why? And then she explained. So then I was like, so if she explained the general concept of tithe. I was like, so if a poor person, somebody who's not financially stable, do you mean to tell me they still need to give 10%? What if that 10% makes or breaks them for that month? And she explains that, the normal, through God, you give, blah, 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 stuff like that. And I just said, oh, okay, but I mean, I'm not giving anything that I earn. And she was like, oh, okay, fine. And yeah, so it wasn't like a forcing matter, so to speak, but I could also kind of see that she was kind of disappointed about it, because I think even no, like if you raise your child a certain way, you expect them to stay in whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
So I think they're refusing to go to church and whatever. And then I remember at some point, I've got 2 young siblings. I remember the youngest was ready to go to church, and she was like, oh, aren't you coming? I said, no, I'm not going. And then she looked at my mom, she was like, oh, then I'm not going as well. And my mom was just like, she just looked at me and she was like, okay, you can stay for today. That's what she told my young sister. You can stay for today. And that's how me and my sister just spent the time, like watching TV and just chilling, basically. Yeah. And then, like it would be on and off. Like I would go just so that I'm not lectured about it or whatever. And then one final time, I was just like, I just don't want to go at all. And she was just like, oh, maybe. So the first excuse that I gave the first time was that I don't feel God in church. I feel him at home when I read and blah, blah, blah and stuff like that, just all these funny excuses. And then I just stopped going, and she stopped asking completely. She just stopped asking. And it went on for a while, just like that. And then after I worked for a bit, I got accepted to do my master's here.
Okay.
And I remember my grandma calling me and asking me, "Oh, have you found a church that side to go to and stuff like that?" I said no. Even my other aunt, and particularly they are into religion. Like they're they never miss a Sunday. Yeah. So. And then at some point, months after I was here, people not that people don't care here, but no one is going to ask you about whether you're going to church. You know what I mean? Are you Christian? Are you,
who cares?
Yes, exactly. Who cares? And it just felt so nice to be in an environment where you didn't need to constantly explain yourself in that regard,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I remember one time, I've never outrightly told my mom, but I think she knows, because there's a time I posted something that said, don't have children. It was something it's not directly quoted, but it was don't have children if you're not prepared for them to be something that you didn't expect, be it they don't believe in whatever anymore. They don't, you know what I mean? They're not straight. They're not,
Very
just
cryptic.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember her commenting on it, saying that I trust the decisions that you're making in your life and stuff like that. And I feel like that was just her acknowledging, because even when I was at home and when I said, oh no, I just don't want to go to church anymore, from then to now, she's never sent me Bible passages or read this and stuff like that. Whereas before she would, but not in a bombarding way. But I feel like that was just her acknowledging that, look, my daughter here is not...
She's no longer interested.
She's not into this anymore. And yeah. And at the stage that I've reached, I'm at this point, I don't care who knows,
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, and
because no leverage on you again, so...
Yeah, that's another thing, I guess, yeah. And also, I understand that, you said, sometimes you have to leave for you to be able to do whatever it is or live the way that you want to live without being tied down if someone's taking care of your finances or you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah.
If you went living in with your mom, such questions will not come up. So
yes, constantly. Yeah.
So that's the beauty of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, fantastic. I really love sharing your story. But there's something that I omitted. I was supposed to ask, especially because of the Nigerian audience. We need to understand what the religious setting in Zambia is like.
Zambia it's I think it's over 95% Christian.
Wow.
Yeah, it's mostly Christian.
Wow.
Last time I checked, yeah.
So no space for Muslims or that they are just in the 5% minority.
Yeah, they're in the minority. Like there are mosques and Hindu temples and all that stuff, but it's not because I know the situation in Nigeria. I think it's half Muslim, half, and there's like conflict as well between
the conflict. Yeah.
So it's quite, and I mean, Zambia has declared a Christian nation, but it's far from.
But on their constitution, they call themselves secular, or do they actually officially call themselves?
It's like officially we are a Christian.
Wow.
I know.
So there's battle of denominations or all that?
Not really. You know what? Like there's no conflict, like outright conflict, because even after being declared that, there's still, I assume there's still legislation in place where Muslims are allowed to build mosques. Hindu temples are allowed to be erected as well, but it's not like
but Christians
they ban they don't ban other doctrines from practicing, but it's just been declared that Zambia is a Christian nation. Which
that's it. Africa is in trouble.
I need religion to live.
We are in trouble. Someone has asked me once that do I believe religion will leave Nigeria or Africa? I'm like, it will, but not in my lifetime. I know I'll be long dead.
Not in this lifetime.
I know I'll be long dead. All I can do is just be a resource that will inspire another person to carry on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because 2 years ago I was not an atheist. Today I am.
It's recent.
So, very recent now. July, August 2020. That was when I accepted the A word. Like, yes.
Like here.
I don't fucking believe this shit anymore. Like, fuck it all, man.
Yeah.
It was coronavirus that was the real accelerator. Because there's been a lot of doubts like 2-3 years prior, but that coronavirus lockdown, seeing the whole chaos, madness just accelerated it. And
I did follow through.
4 months.
Yeah, and SARS as well, I assume.
Yeah, SARS?
Yeah, the situation.
SARS, NSARS. NSARS already crossed over then.
Oh, okay.
I was already deconverted, and that was even when I realized that we have been deceiving ourselves in this country, waiting for God to do something. That one chance, we've been on our own since day one. They've just been playing us. So,
it's so ridiculous because, like, I know that we have a day, like back home, we have a day for prayer and fasting for the economy. I'm like, what is that?
Total nonsense.
What is the president just hiring economists to deal with the economy? You know what I mean? Like, what's this? It's just a lot, honestly.
Africa, we've been superstitious from the get-go. So that's kind of what is still affecting us. But little by little, generation by generation, we'll keep with people speaking up. At least 20 years ago, people would never speak up like this.
No,
there were not even no facilities to run this podcast, like to do what we are doing now. And the money that we have to spend, when we have to be in the same room for this to happen.
Yeah, and you have to meet in secret, So
you needed money, you needed facilities, no. So the internet is exposing religion daily.
Exactly.
And the world is reliant on the internet, so it's too late to apologize.
Yeah. And also, like, when I first discovered this podcast, one of the things that made me more grateful for it is I didn't go through an angry phase.
Oh.
And I feel like I needed, and I feel like I needed to, because when I first started listening to your podcast and hearing everything, I just got angry because I feel like my journey was like mellow. I was researching and doing this and that and that. And I feel like it was vital for me to just release all that frustration of just feeling like all these years have been wasted.
Yeah, it's normal, but people let out the anger in different ways and different intensities.
Yeah. That's You've turned it into something productive.
So I'm letting out my own in every way I can.
Yeah.
Once we are past that, we move on to the next phase. So yes, Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. Would you like us to reach your line, or you still just want to chill?
I'm not even like active on.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
But yeah, at this point, because I've crossed over the atheism line, my concentration now is just trying to see how to decolonize that continent. And because I'm in the field of architecture, I'm looking at it through that lens. And it's a lot, like, obviously you can't tackle the whole thing, but slowly. But that's my particular area of interest after releasing the whole religion thing and seeing that it's almost like that was one of the seeds that damaged Africa.
If not the main seed. For one, I know Nigeria's biggest problem is religion. But people that are in it will always be in denial. But
yeah,
when you're looking at it from outside, you can just see the handwriting on the wall.
Especially with and the disconnect with being a woman and a Christian as well.
Oh,
I forgot. That's another thing that made me leave.
Nice.
It's
even very insidious in Christianity. It's not easy to spot.
No, it's not. And like you said before, women are the biggest cheerleaders of Christianity.
Without women, collapse straight.
Yeah.
That is why there's a constant system of shaming and keeping them beneath men, just to make them feel that there's something they are not enough. It's just so fucked up, man.
It's a cycle. It just feeds into each other, and then it also feeds into like the culture and tradition. How there are just so many archaic practices that just keep women,
Yeah. We'll be free eventually. Just that we'll not be alive to see it.
No.
Be alive to see it. So, Vanessa, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Great having you here.
I will continue to follow your podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I advise your followers to question everything.
Yes.
I don't have sources because, I wasn't, like, my research was basically, like reading the Bible and other decolonial texts. So my sources are not geared towards like dark matter and all that stuff. So
everybody, that's why now everybody's path is so different. So
yeah.
I was just chilling, watching videos, not knowing that I was about to make a big decision. So that's it for you. That's it for you, man.
Yeah. So that's just my advice. Just question everything that you're told. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed Vanessa's story. If you are yet to subscribe, please consider subscribing on all platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google, every other place where podcasts are available. Then if you'd like to share your story, please feel free to reach out via email or via social media. All the links are in the show notes below. So, have a wonderful week, and I will catch you on the next one.